So can we look at, and she said, well, you know, it's 11 factors on that policy, and
Ms.
maybe the
Goodwin,
board
call
needs to look at that policy.
Ms. Goodwin, call. We're getting a little off the topic here.
But I'm asking, I mean, because it's related to, it is related to the Malden area. And
But it's not
most of
related
those
to
are from,
Fountain Inn High School. Let's save that discussion.
Okay.
Another time, if you would.
okay.
We'll do that
But I
sometime.
just wanted to put it out there. I was wondering if this was the time to do that. But with the reducing the feeder patterns, did I hear you say that about reducing, because I wrote it down when you said it about reducing feeder patterns. Are we doing that whenever we do the reassignment?
We consider the feeder patterns whenever we do reassignment. What I said was in the early to mid 2000s, we specifically targeted one area. There was different areas, but one was to try to improve feeder patterns, and we've tried to maintain that, and we consider that whenever we are looking at any student assignment proposal.
Now, whenever you said that they are predicting the growth for Greenville County, it was like 200 and something thousand people, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's why I asked about Fountain Inn, because if Greenville County is predicting that we're going to have 200 and something thousand people by 2040, that's why I was asking about this 1,000 capacity. Because if they're predicting that, and I know, you know, with resection, this, that, and the other, I'm still wondering why we went with 1,000. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin Conroll. Ms. LaVentus Wells.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Farley, I just want to make sure I understand one thing, that Planners Row would be given special priority in requests for special permission to attend Malden High. Is that correct?
Actually, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Actually, any of the area being assigned from Malden to Hillcrest, the majority of the students are in Planners Row. Yes.
Okay.
Priority choice, priority change in assignment, school choice. Yes, ma'am.
So if for some reason in 4 years you're not here and they apply, that's going to be there. Your predecessors will know they get priority, correct?
Yes, I got 3 of them sitting behind me, and they won't be gone all of them won't be gone in 4 years. No, it will be in the record, Mrs. Levinus Wells.
That's the reason for the specificity in the motion related to 25, 26, and or such time as the building exceeds its capacity to hold students,
Okay.
not just full-time, but students.
Okay, and it's in the minutes, too.
It's in the
Just
minutes,
wanted to
yes, ma'am.
Make sure it's in the minutes. Also, having a coach's mindset, the eligibility factor here for special permission, Dr. Royster, could you really focus on that? Because
I'll try.
I really, that's important for coach and for these athletes. So I just want to make sure I understand that as well.
Daryl, you want to walk up here and make sure I don't leave a hole in this or say something incorrect. We've worked out the 7th and 8th grade eligibility question. Basically, the league parameters right now, we decide where they're eligible. So 7th and 8th graders, that's taken care of. Those who would play up on a varsity team. By however we assign them to a school, they would be eligible. So they'd be eligible at Hillcrest if we assign them there. They'd be eligible at Malden if we assign them there. They'd be eligible at Fountain Inn if we assign them there, even if they were in the same neighborhood. Now, that's a 7th or 8th grader playing up on a varsity or junior varsity team, like tennis, cross-country, track, golf, anything for which we don't have a middle school sport. Middle school sports, we govern now. We do not belong to the league for middle school sports. So we take care of that internally. That's not a problem. High school athletics, they determine their eligibility when they enter the ninth grade. So wherever they enter the ninth grade, they would continue to be eligible there so long as they don't move. If they make a move at the end of the ninth grade, if it's through magnet or choice, they can reestablish eligibility one more time. Now, after that, they have to stay there unless they legally move. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir, it did. I just wanted that on the record as well. So thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Wales?
Keep your nose off in the back.
Just quick, help me with the numbers. The number of students that moved out of the Malden attendance zone this year. So choice out and choice in at Malden this year, and Hillcrest, same number.
Choice out, oh, I have it somewhere. Give me just a moment.
And I'm sorry, I thought I had it, but I couldn't find my numbers either.
Choice out, of, Malden was 255 and Hillcrest 234.
So do we have any choice in for Malden?
We did have a little, about 50 students, and that's, some of those are the children of employees working at the school, and a few who had moved out that we allow at high school level to remain because of the high school.
Okay, and the N number for Hillcrest?
40. And the same
And that's
thing.
across the 4 grade levels? That's
Yes,
across the 4
yes,
grade
ma'am.
levels? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Lewis? Mr. Lewis, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to request a roll call vote, please.
I hear you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we have a motion on the floor to reassign the geocodes in Table 1 in the attached student assignment plan from Hillcrest High School to Fountain Inn High School. The geocodes listed in Table 2 from Malden High School to Fountain Inn High School, and the geocodes listed in Table 3 from Malden High School to Hillcrest High School, and to grant priority choice to the geocodes listed in Table 3 to attend Malden High School until 2025-26, or such time as the school exceeds its rated capacity as established annually by the Planning and Demographics Department. Everybody understand the motion? Ms. Stokes, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Chamley?
Yes.
Mrs. Goodwin-Caldwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Grayson?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
I'm going to vote present. Present.
Mr. Meek?
Yes.
Dr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Sailors?
Yes.
Mr. Suddeth?
Yes.
Mrs. Wells?
Yes.
I think you skipped me, but that's okay.
Mrs. Levent as well?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure about Mr. Lewis's vote. I was just,
Okay.
you said present. Okay. I guess so. That's 10 yes, 1 present, 1 absent.
Motion carries. Madam Chairman, I'll turn the committee back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. The administration has asked to pull career and technology education and postpone it till November's agenda. And without objection, we'll go ahead and pull that item, 3.02, and put it on for next month. With Without objection. And so, Mr. Williams, you have another month to add some more programs to your list. So thank you. At this time, I'd like to turn instruction over to Ms. Goodwin Caldwell to chair that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leviticus Wells. For instruction 3.01, innovative course approvals, Dr. Royston.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Thank you, Ms. Goodwin Cowell. Mr. McCoy will present the innovative course request for approval. Mr. McCoy?
Thank you, Dr. Oyster. So you have this month kind of continuing the trend from the last 2 years, I guess, since the state approved the honors rubric for courses at level 1s and 2s. We have 3 more that were completed this past summer. We still have several more in the works from teacher teams that work on these. But the 3 that we are bringing forward to you this month is Orchestra 2 Honors, Sports Medicine 1 Honors, and Health Science 1 Honors to be considered for innovative course approvals at the honors level.
Ms. Goodwin Caldwell.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, Ms. Wells.
Thank you. So, Jeff, do we have to approve annually all our local board courses? Like we do, so it's just the innovative courses for the state that we have to approve
Yeah, they just have to be on record that you approved them.
once? Okay. Well, I was thinking we approve those every year. Is that something else?
I believe it used to be that way at one point in time. The ones that do have to be approved both by the board and state every year is if it replaces a core credit.
Okay.
So if it's
okay,
replacing
okay, so
core
these-
math.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for the health science curriculum, who wrote the standards? Where did the standards come from for the CP health science standards?
So I believe Mr. Williams can correct me if correct me if I'm wrong, but the state has some of the standards for some of those courses. And Mr. Williams, you can speak to the health science specifically.
So specifically, the health science and the sports medicine came from the state. So the CP standards are set up by the state. That's correct. Okay, and so help me a little bit, because when I read the honors curriculum, I looked at the rubric, which I understand what we're trying to do. But I guess one concern I have is that as we are pushing to have more career classes for our students, and we want to create the hands-on piece of that, some of the way we differentiated between CP and honors, it seemed to me would be best if we enhanced the CP standards to teach that way in both classes, I guess. So, I mean, if I can pull it back up and give you an example, because we talk about in one instance, CP students will recognize medical terms. Honor students will be able to use the terms. So what I don't want to do, I understand why it's important to students and why the honors rubric, we want to offer more of those, but I want to just make sure we carry a certain fidelity, and that for those CP students, we're not kind of saying, well, we're going to limit to just what the state said because we got this other honors class.
Yeah, Christine Thomas is our academic specialist for CTE, and she's working very closely with all of our CTE teachers to try and improve the rigor at each of our courses. We did want to separate from what the state had provided for those CTE, both sports medicine and health science standards, and try to make sure that was written in those honors courses. And so, but I agree with your point. We want to elevate the rigor level in all of our CTE classes, and part of that is working closely with those teachers to make sure they can unpack the standards that are given at the state level and push those students a little bit higher. Specifically for the honors level courses, this provides, and specifically in health science, provides students an opportunity to take those courses who may otherwise choose other electives because they're not honors level classes.
And the other thing, Ms. Wells, I'll just say too, very similar to content standards that have very similar. A lot of times it'll say recognize somewhere, and then be able to use in context or whatever. One thing I would say is I wouldn't say necessarily in the beginning level classes we're not putting it in context and using it in context. It's more around the accountability of what we expect and test and require students to do at a higher level to master. I'm not saying we're not going deeper in those CP level classes to the kids, because recognizing a term, no teacher's going to do that out of the context of applying that term to the content. Now, how accountability and master they have to know that would vary based on the CP or honors level, which is what's required.
Okay, so do we think, if we approve this honors level, how many honors sections will we have versus CP sections, do you think? Or will we try to shift all of ours to honors sections?
No, I would anticipate we at each individual school, we build those master schedules based on student request. So when we made the switch for health science 2 honors and sports medicine 2 honors, we let the students sign up for the course that they felt comfortable with some teacher guidance and input and counselor guidance and input. And then we build the master schedule based on the student request.
Okay.
And the other thing as well is too, just for, if I think understand from the past and where you're going here too, is because we would have the same structures put in place for our past honors courses. As you know, from the rubric, you're required to have student samples and student data and all that. Obviously, we don't have those now for the honors courses, but what we do once you guys approve them, next year when it's instituted, the following year, we would be gathering all those samples of work because we have to have it on file for the state. We would actually then be looking at it from an audit standpoint too, to look at both the CP level and the honors level to then to make tweaks if need be to the honors curriculum to say we don't really feel like there's enough difference between CP and honors, or this is maybe not going as rigorous as we'd like it to go from a student work standpoint, evidence-wise. And so I would say too, once you approve these courses, that's not necessarily meant that they're approved and they stay the way they are. We do make tweaks to those based on the student work we get back as evidence.
Okay. Well, and certainly, just so we're clear, I think it'd be awesome if they ended up being all honors, because if what
Sure.
the state is saying as a standard is what they believe is
Lowest level.
low level, and that's basic level, and they're okay with that, I'm not. So I think the honors curriculum is how we should be teaching every student, because it's that hands-on piece of being able to apply knowledge, not just
No, and
receive
recognize it, yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Dr. Ball O'Connor.
For some reason, I'm not able to open something on my computer that related to the curriculum for orchestra to regular versus honors. But it's the same concern, I guess, although I would not make the statement, thank you, that I would think that all courses should be one level or the other. I don't think. But I certainly think that I agree with the fact that it should be the most rigorous the student can handle, and that both should be rigorous and both should be taught with the best practices that we know about how learners get engaged and retain information. But so probably every time we go through this, I would have the same desire for you to justify that it really is honors level work, and that that's somehow really significantly different than what it was before, just because I feel like that's where we need to be, is asking you and saying, let's make sure of that we're not just approving anything that comes through as a request. So you've kind of done it, but would you do it a little bit more to make me understand that the rigor is at the heart of it each time you look at these?
So
Jeff?
the process, I can review the process, and of course I can spell out some of this. I'm not, of course, the expert in Orchestra 2 honors, and
Right.
so, or as Eric with sports medicine. But what I will tell you, the process is very rigorous in the sense that my academic specialists for those content areas have to sign off on all those. So Mr. Wingate, once the committees are done working on, Mr. Wingate looks at that, being the expert in that area, and then he works with those teams to put in the areas, or to beef up, if you will, those areas that he feels are not maybe at the honors level in those standards. So same thing with Ms. Thomas for sports medicine. Then when I get those, once they sign off on them, I meet with them when I have questions, because again, looking at a cold, maybe like one of you all would, particularly something like orchestra, that's not my not my expertise. I ask them specific questions on various areas to make sure I understand where the difference is in there, if you will. The music piece, what I found in the past, is a little bit more difficult because, not difficult for them, it's difficult for us more because of the nuances of the music and sometimes the art pieces. The deeper level, they're looking at the work and things that they might look at for an honors level work that they would not look at for a CP level work. To me, the more cut and dry is the core academic classes, which I'm more expertise in. The art ones I've spent many times with Andrea and Brad, Mr. Wingate, and they can talk all the technical terms and what they're looking for in the music side. But that does get a little more difficult, and it gets sometimes difficult to put it down in a writing piece of that. It's much more evident in the student work piece of it. So when you're looking at a drawing from a CP level class, for example, for an honors level class, and the rubrics attached to that and what the teacher's looking for, that's very much more evident as to the differentiation between CP and honors. And we'll have all that. Again, we always collect that throughout the year after you approve those. So we'll have those always on file for looking at.
And my bias has always been that students ought not be penalized for taking classes in something they love just because it doesn't carry the same weight. Right. And our system in the state has really restricted people who are want to do in the arts in particular, for or ROTC or some other experience that's important to them, and yet it will cause their GPA to go down. And I think that's not the kind of incentive structure we should have. But so I like moving in that direction, but I want to make sure that we're doing it in the way we've talked about.
As a matter of fact, I will just say, because you brought it up, the last couple of times ROTC, so that is one, for example, that we've continued to look at that we are struggling over a little bit. I think we're getting closer to it.
Good.
But that is one, for example, we are struggling with, as we've gone back and forth a couple of times to say, help me understand the difference between CP and honors here, which we're required to do by the state. So that is one, for example, that I know you've been asking for 2 years. That one's the one we're struggling over because truly we keep sending it back to say, it's not really a differentiation. How can we beef it up? How can we beef it up? So that's just an example of some of the rigorous process that's involved.
That's great. That's great. Because I just imagine that will open the door for a lot more students to get that kind of experience, and would be great for the programs
Agreed.
too. And didn't we kind of do the marching band calibration already to say that those students who are investing all that hard work and energy are getting a higher level weight for that work now?
Yes, I believe so. I have to go back and look. I think we approved at least one of the levels of marching band, but I have to go back and look. I know Bradley's working through a lot of his arts and music and arts courses, but I believe marching band, maybe the first level or second level was approved already.
Okay.
But I'd have to go back and look for you.
That's good. All right. Thank you. I'm fine. I mean, I'm finished.
You
Anybody
finished?
else?
Let me increase it for 5 minutes. I have another speaker. Okay, Mr. Chambliss.
Yes, I'm sorry. Just one quick question. It may be pretty much off the wall. It may be directed more to Mr. Webb than anybody. But with respect particularly to the honors sports medicine, do we have any concerns, or we have addressed any concerns? My suspicion is that at some point some athlete is going to sprain an ankle in the gym during practice or something, and one of the students who's taking that course may offer to help bandage him up or something like that. And my guess is, do we have any issues with respect to liability for this, whether it's for the training or for the student, or do we need to take a look at any of that? That's just a question. Or is it maybe covered under the state's Good Samaritan?
Our liability insurance covers any actions that our students do in regard to courses they take. Mm-hmm. So whether that might be working in a machine shop as part of that course, or working with an athletic trainer in the part of athletic training, or, we have students that take the EMT course and they come out certified as EMTs. Our liability insurance covers their actions as a student taking that course if their actions were somehow harmful to themselves or others.
Okay. And that probably answers it. I mean, you can cover anything with insurance, right? So the only question is how much you have to pay for it. But, I mean, do the states, do our Good Samaritan laws cover any of this? And
yeah, I'll be happy to take a closer look at that question. I mean, I do think there's assumption of the risk and other elements there involved, but I'll be happy to look at it a little closer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Sutter?
I'm sorry, Mr. Stubbs, I couldn't hear you.
Lengths of the course.
Course, the health science, sports medicine, orchestra, are
They're all-
these semester, year, what?
It could be either, Mr. Sutter. They're one credit unit value. They're one credit in value, so they would either have to be a semester course on the block or a full year course on the 7th period.
So I'll assume we have these all 4 years. Health science, 1, 2, 3, 4.
We go up to health science. Yes, I believe we have all 4 now.
We have health science 1 through 3, sports medicine 1 through 3, and then we have work-based learning opportunities for students that are engaged in the health science curriculum, both for sports medicine and for health science.
What about orchestra?
Orchestra, yeah,
Yes.
I believe goes all the way up
It
to
does.
level 8. If you're on a
Yes.
block schedule, students could take that every semester.
Okay, so that's 4 courses.
Correct.
In this health science, what, if I'm gonna take this for 3 years, is what we have it,
Yes, sir.
what career field would that help me to be able to be employed in that?
Yeah, health science is very, the classes are specifically designed to be very general. Any careers in the medical profession, dental, lots of different health science possibilities. A high majority of our students identify health science as the career cluster that they're interested in. So as we've added courses over the last few years, that's been an area of focus for us.
Okay, and as I understand in this course here, there's no prerequisite.
For health science 1 and
Yes.
sports medicine 1, that's correct.
We want to have a previous or concurrent course in biological science. That's the only thing we're saying on that. In looking at this, I was looking at the foundation standards in standard number 6 on the ethics. It says compare and contrast religious and cultural values as they impact self-care, such as ethnicity, race, religion, and gender. Explain that to me.
I don't have the standards in front of me, but I would venture to say that's much like a world civilizations class. That's sort of a comparison and contrast of all the religious and ethnic backgrounds and trying to provide some context as to how those might impact self-care.
What about gender? Is that male, female?
Yes, sir.
And ethnicity is the race?
That's correct.
So we have ethnicity and race, so I'm trying to understand, why is this the foundation?
Again, those come from the state standards that are defined by the state and a committee of career tech ed teachers, health science teachers, and then we try to enhance those for the honors level
Okay,
curriculum.
so this right here is a state standard.
That's correct.
Excuse me, Mr. Sutter, how much more time do you need?
Excuse me?
How much more time do you need? 5 minutes?
5.5 minutes.
Okay, let's increase it to 6 minutes.
I was looking at the orchestra 2 honors. And it says here that orchestra 1 through 4 honors will be scheduled during the same class. Does that mean you've got in one class all honors 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Yes, sir. The classes, the kids as they go up, you may only have, as kids progress at different stages or have had band or sorry, not band, orchestra in the past. Orchestra classes, you know, tend to be large because they're a production class. And so you would have kids in the class that are honors, getting, honors level 1 class, honors 2, honors 3, and honors 4 class at the same time.
I've got one teacher.
Correct.
So I was just wondering what would be the number of students in that class if I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So those classes can go up to 50, 40.
How much?
40.
So I've got one teacher who can handle 40 students.
Yes, sir, and that's at the teacher's request. I mean, that's what they need to have in order to actually do orchestra and band. They need those larger classes because they're actually doing orchestra music and band music.
What high schools teach orchestra?
They all teach orchestra. Last time I looked, Mr. Sutter.
All 14 do?
Yes, sir.
So all 14 have a orchestra teacher.
They would have, yes, sir. They would have someone. I'd have to pull the current year's results to see if they're all 14 teaching it this year. But last year or the year before, when we pulled it, they were teaching orchestra or had it on their schedule. We'd have to look to see if they're actually teaching the class versus whether it's just on the schedule.
Then what we've got in high schools are band and chorus and strings and orchestra. Or is orchestra a part of strings?
Yes, sir.
It is?
Yes, many of those teachers will teach dual classes. They may teach strings and orchestra.
And within that, Mr. Sutter, they may have multiple groups. They may have multiple bands. They may have a jazz band, a marching band, a concert band. They could have multiple groups within strings. They could have multiple groups within chorus. They could have different choral performing groups. So there are all kinds of variations that they could have within band, chorus, and strings or orchestra.
We've got that Orchestra 2 honors are required to participate in these concerts, winter's concert, spring concert, et cetera. Do all schools do that?
If they teach that particular course, yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's part of the whole rubric that Mr. Wingate puts out for each of those music courses, that they have to participate in so many competitions and participate in so many organizations.
Are those advertised to the board?
Those will be.
I would like to attend some of these.
Yes, sir. Certain ones would be I don't know what you guys get specifically. Many of them are public, like the winter and spring concerts. We publicize publicly. Some of the audition type stuff would not necessarily be published, to the general
Traditionally,
public.
Mr. Sutherland, we would invite you from the district level to district-wide events like that, and the schools would individually invite you to their own performances. Because that's literally too many for someone up here to keep up with. So if they're having band concerts or choral concerts, we leave that to them to extend an invitation to the board members in that area or ones that wish to be invited. So any school that you wish them to extend you an invitation, you can let them know, or we'll be glad to let them know for you.
Well, they got to let me know first before I can let them know.
No, sir. If you'll tell us you want to be on their invitation list or some distribution about when they have concerts, we'll let them know that.
Well, I saw where we have the jazz concert coming up from the Fine Arts Center. So do you have to be invited to that, or can you just?
Well, it's a public concert. What I'm saying is if you want to be made aware of a school level concert, we'd have to let the school know that you want to be made aware of it.
I would like to have the schools be aware of it. I would like to attend their concerts if they will give me an invitation. I don't know what invitations I'm going to be able to go to until I get the invitation.
Yes, sir. We can.
So if you would have them.
Yes, sir.
I think it's something we need to really.
I'll add you to the 14 high schools lists.
The last question I have on the sports medicine. It says healthcare careers and athletic training, physical therapy, medicine, exercise, physiology, nursing, biomechanics, nutrition, psychology, and radiology. Now this is it says here they're offered at 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Do we teach it at all four, or did I understand you to say that we've got that now in 1, 2, 3 only?
They're elective classes, and so they can be chosen by a student at any grade level. That is to say, a student who's a senior that just wants to take sports medicine 1 would be allowed to take sports medicine 1.
So they don't build on one another?
They certainly do, and our hope is we can get those students in earlier in their career, their high school career, but that doesn't preclude them from taking a class their junior or senior year.
Okay. If they've got a physical therapy class, I'd like to volunteer for that class.
Okay. Duly noted.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutter. Is there any other discussion or questions? Is there a maker of the motion?
Sorry, I just have one quick question. So sports medicine, does that mean it's just offered at Wade Hampton? Or is that,
No,
now
ma'am.
that it's approved, it could be offered anywhere based on
Yes.
demand? But right now, there's only demand at Wade Hampton?
No, ma'am. There's demand other places as well, but Wade Hampton was the one that took the initiative. They work with other schools, I'm sure. Like most of these committees, we put together our representation. We invite to say what other schools like to contribute a teacher to work on this. But no, once a school submits it, doesn't matter what school it's under, it's then open to any school in the district.
Okay, so orchestras at all 14, what about the other two, health sciences and sports medicine?
I know health science.
We'll send you that.
Okay, yeah, I
I
just,
wouldn't so much give you an accurate answer.
okay, great, that's it, thanks.
I guess I need to increase the time. I have another speaker.
Oh, no, I was just gonna make the motion for you.
Oh, never mind. All right, Ms. Wells.
So I move to approve local board courses, Health Science 1 honors, Sports Medicine 1 honors, and Orchestra 2 honors as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been properly, the motion has been properly made and second. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. It has been approved. Madam Chair, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell. At this time, I would ask if Mr. Suddeth would chair Building and Grounds.
Item 4.01, our facilities project report. Good afternoon, Mr. Carlin. Are you going to take care of this, or do you need help from Dr. Oyster? Sir? Going to take care of this, you need help from Dr. Oyster?
Well, I always appreciate help from Dr. Royster when I need it.
That's a good answer, Mr. Carter.
Great answer.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Carlin's here will answer any question you might have on the facilities project.
Okay.
I'll help him if he needs it.
If he needs help, I'm sure he'll see it. Mrs. Wells?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carlin, can you give me an update on Summit Elementary and where we are? I know we've got some things going on and very exciting things going on.
Yes, ma'am, we do. We are in the middle of design development drawings on that project. We have presented the drawings to all our stakeholders within the district administration and other interested parties. They're taking a look at those right now and providing us comments. We hope to wrap up design in the next few months and then be on track for a bid and award, hopefully in the March timeframe.
Great. I have a good many residents in that area community that are excited and looking forward to the completion of this. So thank you.
As well as another member that lives very close to the school.
Lives right there. That's why I thought.
And all my neighbors are very interested in that project.
Yes, they are. So let's make sure that that's completed.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Meek?
Thank you, Mr. Carlin.
Sir.
The roofing for Mauldin High School, Greenville Middle School, Northwest Middle School.
Yes, sir.
Ralph Chandler Middle School, are all those totally new? I mean, are they going to do the whole roof?
These are, no, these are portions of the roof in most cases, depending on the age of the roof. There are very, very few of these that are the entire roofing system.
Okay. Did you get a chance to go up and look at Berea Middle School, the security glass or whatever in front?
Well, I have been to a number of our schools and talked to the the folks who greet us and meet us, our receptionists and principals and assistant principals, and talked to many of them about the new enhancements. I will say they've been met with mixed reviews when it comes to their opinion on it. Some of them think it, you know, it provides that sense of security. Some think it's, you know, it cuts down on being publicly friendly, but I think with the intent of the project, we've achieved what we'd set out to do.
Okay. One of the schools I won't mention, but I'll tell you later, it seemed to me that, you know, where they got little squares all over the place.
Yes, sir.
I noticed one a day or so ago that there was no glass in the window right beside of where they come out of the office on the door.
Yes, sir.
A little slim fellow like me could reach in and I think open the door. I'll tell you about that one, but
okay. That one, I don't know that I'm familiar with that one in particular. I do know we're still working out some of the punch lists on the job, but I don't think any of the punch list items have to do with the security piece.
Okay. I mean, I just thought that was kind of odd that didn't have any glass on it right next to the handle
Yes,
of
sir.
the door. So
Yeah, I would be interested in
I'll tell
finding
you
out
about
where that
one.
is.
Also, Tanglewood Middle School pole lights, what are you doing there?
Tanglewood Middle School pole lights. Let's see. We've got a more expansive update. Let's see what we have here. I don't see any particular scheduling problem with those.
I mean, where are you putting the lights? I mean, where are the lights going? Out front or in the back?
I believe it's in the back portion of the school where we've had some dark areas.
Yeah.
But I'm a little fuzzy on the exact details on
back
where
in
those are.
woods behind the
I do not believe it's in front of the school.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
Just one question, the Jail Man Stadium bleachers.
Yes.
Could you give me just an update on the scope of that project?
Okay. We're about 60% on that project, but we do anticipate being completed somewhere around the middle of this month.
And what's the scope of what's being done there?
I think in the majority of that project, we're converting that existing lighting to LED and maybe adding a little as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sailors?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, since we're talking about LED lighting,
Yes, sir.
what's the status on the conversion of replacing the internal LED internal lighting at Riverside, specifically the cafeteria and the media center, from dimming ballasts to LEDs?
Riverside High School.
They're in a position right now to where they're having to replace ballasts in those dimming light fixtures. And
I need to
you
check
gotta
on
buy
that.
a
I think
car.
that may be part of a continuation project for dimming
Yes.
that we are putting together right now. I don't think it was part of the initial.
Well, to
that
replace
we
a
have
ballast in one of
completed.
those fixtures costs more than my car does. So
Yes, sir.
anything
There
we
is,
can do to-
we are putting a plan together, and we're putting it together to present to administration for funding that will take care of the dimming issues on the schools that have not been touched to date.
Okay, so essentially you're looking at removing dimming?
No, adding dimming to schools that do not currently have it.
There's, in the information that we're going to bring to you in a month or two, whenever the auditors finish their work, as far as recommendation for expending some revenue in excess of expense, one of the items on there is dimming for the LED project. When we first began the LED project, we had dimming as a component where we did all the LED light replacements. It was being funded through the rebates we were receiving from Duke to put into LED lights. In the midst of the LED lighting project, Duke changed their rebate structure. So dimming was no longer being funded through the rebate structure. Having put in much brighter lights, we found pretty quickly that if we don't have the ability to dim those, it creates a number of issues.
Yep.
Particularly trying to see a screen like this in a classroom with LED lighting and create some other lighting issues. So one of the things we're going to be bringing to you is to continue to ensure that we do 100% LED interior light replacement that we be able to go back and pick up the LED dimming component of those changeouts.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Bush?
Yes, it's October.
Yes, ma'am.
And the parking lot's still taken up at Northwest Middle School. So is that like the end of October? How do we stand in that roofing project at Northwest Middle School?
We're still on track with that one right now
Okay.
to complete by that date.
Okay.
But I'm watching all these projects closely as we get closer to the end.
'Cause I like
In
to-
most cases, the membrane portion of the roof is complete, and we're doing metal work and some of the cleanup effort with these projects.
Yeah. Well, I liked your suggestion last month that maybe the roofing companies could kind of condense down to smaller footprint.
Smaller footprint? Yes, ma'am.
And that would help out since, during the summertime, it was fine for them to take up the whole parking lots, but with some of the, and I was down at Malden High School on Friday night and saw all the roofing material and everything still in the front of Malden High School. So
Yeah, we had that scattered in about 3 different locations.
Yeah.
It's all down to that one next to the big oak tree. But you're right, we're looking very forward to getting rid of the rest of it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Wells?
Thank you. Kind of general question, you said Summit Drive, you guys are in design right now. And
Yes, ma'am.
all your stakeholders. So that's in addition to an existing school.
Correct.
Correct me if I don't have this right, but generally, we already had a plan for how we would expand that school, so we kind of had a place for a wing that we'd set aside, or not, at Summit Drive?
Well, I may need some help from Betty on that one, but
I think the answer to that is during the BEST program, the A&E firms that receive contracts during the BEST program, part of their direction was to provide a footprint for a potential expansion. And I believe in some cases, they worked more diligently on that than in others. In some cases, it might simply have been, that looks like a good place to put a rectangle of this dimension. So what we found is some places that future siting is okay, other places it's not. And I don't know the particular case at Summit Drive. I don't know if they made an initial provision there or not. And if they did make one, whether that's the one we're actually using.
I will tell you that with that site, particularly the back portion of it where this addition's going to be, we really needed that property that we purchased off of Chick Springs Road, if nothing else than to get approval from our fire folks at the state and local on how we could bring folks in more safely to the site and provide that fire access when necessary.
The other thing that we've seen happen, it's beginning to happen now, what would have been deemed adequate as a car stacking area by OSF will no longer be deemed as adequate. They are asking for longer stacking distance than they did during the BEST program and even subsequent to the BEST program. And I think we've seen that in the last probably maybe 2 projects, and and will be true going forward.
So that's OSF, not DOT.
Oh, yes, OSF's on site.
They're yes, all those organizations. I mean, it's with the car stacking and the bus stacking, it's now Office of School Facilities because of DOT, but also because of the State Fire Marshal. A lot of that is all tying together with access.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I guess the question sort of born out of 2 curiosities. One is we aren't using schools the way we were using schools. So when we have a school that we built in 1998 and we had a place for an expansion, so that our long-range facilities plan stays up to date and fresh and reflects what we really need, whether it's the addition, whether it's the land, whether it's whatever the pieces are. I just kind of want to have some attention on what that looks like. So if Summit, if you say, okay, well, we're looking at that, but where we thought we would have put in 12 classrooms, now we're doing, a bigger multi-use space. Whatever that looks like, I just was kind of interested in how is that happening when you're actively designing, and then how does that translate to all these expansions that we know that are coming because of the 220,000 people that are coming to the county, how are we projecting that ahead so that we keep our long-range facilities plan updated?
Yes, ma'am. And like Dr. Royster said, you know, the architects of record probably at each site identified a potential spot, but there's a lot more work and studying that we're going to need to do on each of these locations where we think we're going to have further expansion to see if we have what we need.
So where are we with that then? Because we had a consultant that we were working with that was going to provide some
Betty
recommendations.
can speak to where we are in that process.
We are working on that process, hoping to finish that in the next few months. And of course, it particularly targeted some of our older schools that we have for consideration as to what we will be doing with them. We're particularly thinking in the time frame of when all the best bonds are paid off, which is December of 2028. But we're in looking at those, Mrs. Wells, we're looking at surrounding schools in addition to what our recommendations about those schools are going to be. Whether additions, new schools, or some other option.
And so we have the consultant we have on board. Did we bring back the same consultant that's helped us the previous times, or do we bring in a new consultant to help with
We
the work?
actually, Public Pathways, which we've used several times, but the facilities department also hired consultants to evaluate the physical or the structure, the HVAC systems, all those various components of the facilities.
Okay. And is there a component of that that's actually looking at the site as well? So site constraints, site additions, all those kinds. When do we think that report is going to be something that the board could dig into a little bit?
Well, I don't know when they're going to finish their work, and we need time to go through and analyze it. One thing that they're not looking at that we also need to look at is based on population projections, where do we believe we need to be acquiring school sites? And that's something we would want to go ahead and do. Absent the ability to predict with certainty an economic downturn, property is not going to be any less expensive in 5 or 10 years than it is now. Now, if we could predict the economy is going to do this in 5 years, we'd say, oh, we need to wait 5 years, buy the property like we acquired the Fountain Inn High School site. But I don't think that's more wishful thinking than substantive planning. So we're going to have to look at that. We've had a little bit of discussion about it already, particularly the area we were talking about earlier today. We have two factors at play down there, just using this as one example, and there are examples all over the county. Probably our oldest and most uniquely designed middle school is Bryson. It is the only building, regular school building in this county where students have to go outside to go from class to class at some point during the day. It's one of our oldest facilities, and it is located in a poorly logistical place right up under Hillcrest High School. So as we look at the future of that area, we probably need another school site somewhere down there as a replacement site for that school. And what might be the other offshoots of that? We have the concept of a pre-K to 8 feeding Fountain Inn High School. Well, the logical balance to that is a pre-K to 8 from the Fountain Inn side of the attendance area feeding Fountain Inn High School. And in fact, we've done a little preliminary work looking at where that might logically be and what property we might need to acquire to facilitate that. But we have to do that really all over the county to bring back something that is a more full recommendation. So once they finish, then there's work that internally has to be done. So I don't know what the time frame on all that's going to be. So obviously it depends on when we get the report back from the A&E firms that have been engaged to look at building system condition and whenever Pathways finishes their work.
Well, and part of my driver, honestly, is the 25 acres we bought at Fort Shoals, which kind of wasn't on my radar for a need we had. So it just kind of, you know, to your point about you don't really know, or we've kind of maybe not lost track, but it's not kind of at the forefront and fresh in our minds which buildings really were adapted well to expansion. So which ones are going to be easy to expand, and which ones do we need to kind of just cut our losses and say, yeah, we're going to need to do something different, because all that then comes to needing to buy property, needing to look ahead to that. So I know y'all started talking about that in the spring or late winter about this process. So I'm just kind of interested in at least maybe getting a little bit brought to the board just to kind of say, hey, here's kind of our initial findings kind of thing. So, okay.
Thank you.
So you think 6 months? You think?
I don't think we'll have some recommendation ready when we would traditionally bring the long-range facility plan, but I don't think it's imperative that it be in this year's edition of the long-range facility plan. I think it's going to take a little bit longer than that, because normally we brought that in February, March. So right now, I don't see that. I really don't see that us having the information and the time to act on it between now and then.
I do think there's still a lot of work to be done to get it ready for
we can certainly
Dr.
give you
Royster.
an updated report of where that stands, either at that time or prior to that time.
Well, and I guess outside of that, then maybe if we already have recognized that we need to be actively looking for property beyond what you've already told us.
As Dr. Royster said, he and I have had a couple of discussions about some of that. And of course, you know, the site, reviewing the sites, I'll work with Mr. Carlin.
It'd also be nice to know what the county, whatever they end up doing with their long-range plan, that will to a degree factor into it.
To some degree, that has been something we've been waiting on, because I don't know if you've seen their various scenarios, but whichever scenario they adopt and how restrictive they are will determine where population is most likely to grow. So I've sort of suggested that we really need that finalized to help us move forward in a most productive way.
Okay, and we talked about trying to engage a little bit when that's completed to bring some of that information to the board and into our conversations, right?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
I'll just keep looking for that. Thank you.
Mr. Meek?
Thank you. Something Dr. Royster said a few minutes ago got me thinking, do we have any type of plan or do we have a review of stacking lanes for schools?
We do, when we get complaints, which we get from time to time about the length of car lines or traffic, we send a group out comprised of people from the facilities department, our security specialist, and someone from the appropriate law enforcement jurisdiction, and look at it to see if there might be some change that we need to make there. But do we go out and look at all 80-some of them? No, sir, we don't have that under a regular review. And most of the places where we know we have a problem, we have site constraints that really don't provide much option for relief from that problem.
Okay. I'll mention one to you after the meeting.
Sure.
Thank you.
He's done.
I'm done.
Is there anyone else? If not, that concludes my portion of the program. Turn it back over to you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Before I entertain a motion to adjourn, I wanted to update you all. Don't forget, we have a special call meeting, and that will follow at, we'll begin at 12:30. We'll have a short lunch, and we'll resume at 12:30 for the special call meeting. And also, after the special call meeting, we will have a test score board workshop summary. So, with that being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. The motion passes. We will adjourn and reconvene at 12:30.